Okay, so David Hume was an Enlightenment philosopher, and he is basically known today, in very general terms, as the sort of the father, if you will, of empiricism. And empiricism is the idea that only things that can be directly observed are worth like talking about. He wasn't interested in metaphysics, which is the debate in philosophy over things that can't necessarily be observed in the natural world. He was only concerned with the material, what was in front of him, what he could prove by testing, basically with the scientific method. So he took this idea of empiricism and applied it to every facet of life that he could. And eventually, pretty logically, he landed on the question of God and spirituality in general. And obviously, at the time, like, yeah, it was the Enlightenment. John Locke was over like chilling about like natural rights and freedom and all that stuff. But that was stuff that didn't necessarily challenge the social status quo in a way that, frankly, atheism did at the time. So while Hume was pretty well known while he was alive, a lot of his more like meteor writings, particularly those about religion and the question of God and whether he exists and the implications of his existence or lack thereof, they were published posthumously after he died. So he died quite a long time ago, and now we can try and get at like the bigger picture of all of his works and put them together and see what he was trying to say about the world. And on the question of religion, he attributed like the foundation of the question to the Greek philosopher Epicurus, but that was kind of apocryphal. There isn't really any proof that this guy said it originally. So I think it's fair to really attribute the question, or at least its popularization, to Hume himself. And the big question that he asked was, if there is a God, like the Abrahamic God that we all know and love, that is all good slash all loving, all knowing, and all powerful, if we assume that he exists as a legitimate entity, why is there evil in the world? So this is how he specifically phrased it. Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? In layman's terms, here's what all of that mess kind of means. So, if God is all good and wants to prevent evil, but he just can't, like he is not able, then that implies that he isn't all powerful. If he wants to but can't, then he can't possibly be omnipotent. If he is able to do it, if he is all powerful, and yet he's not willing to do it, then, well, if there is evil in the world and he doesn't do anything about it, then that seems to imply that he's not actually all good. If he is not all powerful and he's not all good, then why is he God? So essentially, Hume ended up concluding that the existence of God, as we understand him in the West, just didn't make rational sense to him. There was no way he could empirically prove it, because he was an empiricist. If something couldn't be proven, then it wasn't worth debating. And this question that he posed ended up becoming known as the problem of evil, which is really one of the biggest topics in philosophy for the past couple centuries. It's been debated to death and to death. Basically, the crux of the problem is if there is an all-powerful and all-good and all-knowing God, then he wouldn't allow evil to exist. But evil does exist, and therefore Hume does not believe God exists, in so many words. Now, I want to say up front that I am not here to somehow prove whether there is a God or not, one way or another. Frankly, that isn't really my business. I, I have no interest in trying to persuade anyone to believe or disbelieve. I think that is your choice. My goal here is to kind of just explore the implications of the problem of evil and how I think deciding either way uh, reveals something about you and the way that you look at society. What kind of prompted me to explore this question was, for research purposes, I was watching this episode of The Daily Wire, yes, Ben Shapiro's show, where he had the gentleman Ravi Zacharias on, and he is a Christian apologist, and apologism in Christianity is basically the idea of using philosophy and debate to try and prove the existence of God. And I think that he provides some pretty interesting responses to the problem of evil. On the other hand, I think a lot of less experienced or less diligent apologists uh, don't really offer very satisfying responses to the problem of evil. I think they could do better. So let's start by examining some of these counter arguments or objections to the problem of evil that I think are a little tired and not that strong. So the very common one that I have heard is that evil exists because God has given us the gift of free will. He has given us the greatest gift possible, which allows us to be good, but it also necessarily allows us to be evil. What this is basically saying is, one way or another, we are who we are. We're allowed to choose our own fate, more or less. And that has resulted in, the greatest possible things and the worst possible things, the greatest goods and the worst evils, and that is what defines us, and that is our identity as the children of God. Now, the main problem I see with this argument is it presupposes that free will is a good thing in and of itself. Now, that sounds kind of crazy. Like, it seems like free will just is of course it's good. Why wouldn't you want free will? Why wouldn't you want to be able to make your own decisions without being coerced one way or another? Like, that is one of our gifts as humans. That's what makes us who we are, like I said. But if free will does allow us to commit such atrocities, then why couldn't we just live in a world where we didn't have free will, but there was no concept of evil? Like, sure, we wouldn't have free will, but there wouldn't be evil. There would only be goodness. And if there is an all-benevolent God and an all-powerful God, why couldn't he create a universe that is fair and just, without evil? The opposite, frankly, of the universe that we live in. So this begs the question for me: what good is free will if it gives us the worst things in humanity? Like, it gives us animal cruelty, pedophilia, concentration camps, things that we recognize as evil. Why does God allow those things to exist? If this is the consequence of free will, I don't know that it seems completely worth it to me. Let's say you were given a choice to live in two different worlds. In world one, it's perfection. It is your idea of the most blissful existence possible. There is no greed or hunger. There is no strife between people. Everyone gets along, and there isn't any evil. It is pure goodness. But you don't have free will, because it's impossible for you to commit evil. However, in world 2, you do have free will. You are allowed to make all of your own choices without any of it being predetermined. You are your own person. But it's a shitty world. There is evil. Which of the two choices is more attractive? I don't know. That depends whether you as a person value free agency or peace as a person. What is more important to you? Personally, I don't know. I think that it's one of those questions that's pretty much impossible to answer because, like I said, I enjoy being able to make my own choices. It grants me some semblance of control in my life, and I think being able to feel some level of self-control is very important to a person. But if a shitty world is what I get in return for it, was it worth it? I mean, why wouldn't I want to live in a world that's perfect, where I have all my friends and family and my cat, and I can just, you know, live in blissful ignorance forever. Nobody is suffering for it. It's just perfection. I don't know. And what's interesting me is that perfect blissful world that I'm talking about. It sounds an awful lot to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds a lot like the Christian idea of heaven, where there isn't evil, and it is the ideal world in every way. But then, my idea of an ideal world, it doesn't have free will. So that poses the question. If you are a Christian, do you believe that we have free will in heaven? If so, then that means there's the potential for there to be evil in heaven, and that doesn't make sense. That's pretty much self-contradictory. If not, if we don't have free will in heaven, and it's impossible to do evil things in heaven, then, well, you've kind of just admitted that free will actually isn't a good thing in and of itself, because why isn't it in heaven? A couple valid responses to this, I think. One of the obvious ones is, well, yes, actually, you do have free will in heaven, so you technically have the ability to commit evil, but you're not gonna, because it's heaven. Like, come on. In this infinite paradise, who's just gonna want to wake up one day and just be a dick to all of the other sinless people when you're in the presence of the big man himself, God, the perfect being that you would only ever want to worship? That I think that makes a lot of sense if you're Christian, but if you're not necessarily convinced that God is all good or worthy of worship, because the problem of evil I don't think has been answered yet, then that isn't a very satisfying argument, in my opinion. Another one that I hear a lot is, so the reason that we have free will on Earth is because it allows us to figure out who we are as people. It gives us character development. Evil is a necessity, because without evil, we wouldn't be able to grow as people. I think there's some truth to that. I think people grow the most out of the worst experiences. The hardest times of my life, I have emerged as a better person than I was before. So I think that has the makings of a sound argument. But then I think a good response to that is, well, what about just unjustifiable evil that can't be explained by a character development? What about a childhood cancer? A 6-year-old kid who gets brain cancer, leukemia, and he never even gets the chance to figure out who he is as a person. He just dies an agonizing death before he's able to experience the world. And he's just a kid. He didn't deserve that. What sins could he have possibly committed in his 6 innocent years? And what about natural disasters? inexplicable things and uncontrollable forces of nature, like tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, where people die indiscriminately. It doesn't matter if you're good or evil. Nature has just decided to screw you on that particular day. And, you could say, well, all of those things are bad and seem inexplicable, but it's not bad, actually. It's good, because God has a plan. We don't necessarily know what the plan is, because it's inconceivable to us, but he does have a plan that will eventually maximize happiness for us all. And, the kid dying of leukemia, it's sad, but think of what's going to come after. He's gonna get to go to heaven and chill up there with the angel homies. So actually, it turned out okay. And the same with the people dying in the tsunami. Yeah, it's sad, but look at what they got out of it. It's pretty cool, huh? I think it's fine if you're comforted by that idea. My problem with that is that's not comforting at all, to a kid dying an agonizing death in a hospital for no reason. If he's just gonna die so young anyway and go to heaven basically as soon as he's born, then what was even the point of being born? If it was God's plan for this child to be born and then die at 6 years old, what was the point of the 6 years? What was the point of the agony? Why not just cut the kid a break and, shoot him straight to heaven? That's where he's going to end up eventually. Why not just spare him the misery? The same deal with the natural disaster. I think this is one of the worst arguments for God. Maybe God does have a plan that will eventually work out for us all. I don't know. But if you're trying to have a serious, rational argument as an apologist, just saying that God has a plan, we don't know what it is, but it'll work out, that doesn't follow, rationally speaking. It's not really an argument. So, all of that to say, I am not personally swayed by the free will response to the problem of evil. I don't think it solves it. Maybe it does for you. Maybe it makes sense and resonates to you as a person. And if that is going to help you live a better life, good for you. I think faith can definitely steer people in the right direction when they need direction, and that's fine. But it doesn't follow for me. The way I see it, if there was an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good God, then we could, just live in a better universe. Why not, if you are all-powerful, Mr. God, sir, if you're listening, why not create a universe where we have free will, but there just isn't evil? It's not that we're incapable of doing evil, it's just that there isn't even the concept of evil. It doesn't make any rational sense. Well, that seems impossible. But if you're God, isn't it possible? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but either way, I don't think free will is a very good response to the problem of evil. Now, if you're clever and you want to solve the problem of evil in a way that puts God in a good light, you may have been noticing a couple of logical inconsistencies in the arguments that I've been making so far. This leads me to an argument that I think is actually pretty solid in response to the problem of evil. It's the best one that I have personally seen so far, and it's the one that came from Mr. Ravi Zacharias on the Daily Wire. This is the argument that he made. So the problem of evil was posed to him. He thought about it and said, so if there is a problem of evil, that means that you recognize there is evil in the world. Okay? If there is evil, then there has to be good. Yes? Okay, makes sense. So it's not really possible to have a universe that's only good or only evil. They only exist in relation to each other. It's like some dualist shit where it's no light without dark, no dark without the light. Okay, cool. So you've established the presence that uh, if there is evil, and I think that there is, by my definition of it, then there must be good. Okay, that follows. The argument that he makes from there is if you acknowledge that there is good and evil in the universe, that implies that there is a moral law. There we are again, back to the universal moral standard to the universe. If there is good and evil, like those ideas have to come from somewhere. And the argument that he makes is if there is moral law and order to the universe, that must mean that there is a moral lawgiver. I mean, laws don't just come out of nowhere. If the universe is random, these things wouldn't just arise. These things make sense and are logically consistent. And it's not that big of a leap to imagine if there are laws, the laws were created by someone, in this case, God. And he concludes that if there is evil, and you define evil basically as unjust harm being inflicted upon an innocent person, then you're acknowledging that people, human beings, have an intrinsic value to them. And there's no way that intrinsic value could have just popped out of nowhere in this random and chaotic universe. They had to have come from somewhere. And in his mind, that somewhere must be God. Okay, interesting. This is a new one. It's an argument that I have not really heard before, and it's apparently the solution to the problem of evil offered up by the amazing skeptic community, led by such stalwart figures as Mr. Ben Shapiro, host of The Ben Shapiro Show. This is their response, this is their answer. Boom, they've won. Yeah, maybe. But I think if you actually dissect the argument, it falls into some of the same shortcomings that the other ones did. For example, it presupposes that if there is moral law, there must be a moral lawgiver. I think this is a misunderstanding or misconstruing of the definition of the word law. Like we have legal laws. It's illegal to kill a person. It's illegal to break into sheets and demand that they hand over all of their cheesy Doritos. It's wrong to do that because it's against the law. Okay, cool. That's a law. But then there is a different kind of law, isn't there? Like there's the laws of physics. There's the law of thermodynamics, inertia. These are different types of laws. These laws weren't written by anybody. They just seem to be there. And what I believe is that the idea of a moral law is closer to that type of law, like the scientific law, than a legal law that was written by a politician somewhere. So if I don't think that the law of thermodynamics was written down by someone and put into effect in the universe, why do I need to believe that if there is good, someone beyond my understanding has decided that there will be good in the universe as a law? So that's one response. And going further, I think you can believe in the ideas of good and evil without necessarily thinking that there are objective standards of good and evil. I've discussed before, I think it's impossible to have an objective moral standard. I think that everything that we consider to be moral is at least subjective to some degree. There is no universal moral law that was written down somewhere, unless I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But the way I look at that is, yes, I personally believe in the ideas of good and evil, and I feel strongly that some things are either good or evil. But I don't believe that that's objective somehow. I acknowledge that they're just my ideas of good and evil, and someone else is going to have different ideas about what good and evil are. And I think that's okay. And you may rightly say in response, well, that's getting into the realm of moral relativism, and that's a dangerous road to go on, because it's saying that basically all ideas are basically equal. So you can't say that if I go out and kill a person, it's wrong. Well, actually, I can. Because, like I just said, they're my ideas of good and evil. Well, you might say, well, what if there's like a huge disagreement over whether something is bad or good? Well, I hate to break it to you, but that's kind of how the world works. People have disagreements about how things should be. Isn't that kind of part of our free will, our identity of evil? We can't seem to agree on a lot of really important issues. Uh, but we do seem to have independently developed the subjective moral standards that things like murder and thievery are wrong, because they're a very obvious detriment to society. So, no, I don't believe that there is any such thing as a moral law. I believe we have our evolutionary instincts tell us that certain things are wrong, and those become our subjective standards of morality, and we take those standards and we put them into human law, legal law. It's illegal to do this or that. I don't think there is anything resembling like a law of nature. Like I keep using the example of thermodynamics. I don't think that there's like a law of good and evil like there's a law of gravity. That doesn't make any sense to me. We back to empiricism, we can observe gravity. We cannot objectively observe the concept of evil, because it is a concept. Second, they say that if we admit that there is such a thing as evil, which I think is completely subjective, but if we believe in something resembling evil, that assumes that people have intrinsic worth, because evil is defined as unjust harm against innocent people. And they believe that something that has intrinsic worth cannot be explained by a random universe. It can only adequately be explained by a creator, such as God. Well, not so fast, because I am struggling to actually conceptualize the idea of something being intrinsically worthy in my mind. I kind of get it, like something is worthy in and of itself, but can something be unintrinsically worthy? What would that even mean? What does it mean to say that people have intrinsic worth? I strongly believe that human life is precious, so I believe in some kind of intrinsic worth in that respect. But that doesn't come from God, I don't think. It comes from me. Again, my ideas of morals, which I think come from our evolutionary identity as humans, as empathetic beings. And he keeps implying that all of this is somehow random, that either the universe is carefully constructed by an intelligent creator, or everything is totally random. And it's basically like a 50-50 chance on a cosmic scale that the universe exists or it doesn't exist. And those are the two options. I don't think so, because I don't think we have anything close to evidence that it's even possible for the universe to not exist. Like, if there is something, anything, if there is the concept of time, if there's the concept of matter, then there is a universe as we understand it. And my my idea that people have intrinsic worth and that life is precious, it isn't random. That doesn't just come from nowhere. Obviously, it comes from a very orderly and understandable evolution as our species. Like I keep saying, empathy, that is key to who we are as a species. It's what separates us from the lower forms, if you will. We evolved the concept of human empathy not out of some random chance, but because it made sense. If we were kinder to each other and weren't super territorial like other animals, then we can get along, we can create settlements, and we can flourish more easily as a species. That isn't random. That is explainable by science. So to say that without a god, everything in the universe and its inhabitants is random, and without a god, we have nothing to direct us as people, we just be lawless, mindless beasts, I think is wrong. And more than that, I think it's an insult to humanity as a whole, because I think we are capable of great things, flawed creatures though we may be, and those flaws make us who we are, for better or worse. I think it's really selling humanity short to say that we'd be nothing without a supernatural entity to guide us. I think that'd be discrediting so many generations of scientific and moral advancement, you know? So, no, I don't think everything is random, nor do I think everything was necessarily intelligently designed. I think our ability to distinguish between good and evil, and to believe in such things as people having intrinsic worth, is perfectly explainable by our evolutionary process. So, with all that said, we're kind of stuck, aren't we? Because we still have the problem of evil, and I don't think any of these proposed answers from the apologist make sense to me. They don't satisfy me. So at least for now, I remain unconvinced that the idea of God and evil are reconcilable with each other. It doesn't make sense to me. If I cannot conceptualize an all-knowing, all-good, and all-powerful God coexisting with the world I currently live in, then how am I to believe in such a God? How do I believe in something I don't understand? Now, maybe I still do. Personally, I think the question of whether I personally believe in God is kind of irrelevant here. My purpose in all of this is to look at some of the rational implications of the arguments made either way. I think it's possible that if you start to lack a belief in a universal standard of morality, you can fall down the rabbit hole of moral relativism and question whether you can actually know anything at all. And that can be a really scary thing. At the same time, I think you can look optimistically at humanity and be proud of us as a species that we have been able to create some of these laws by our own that allow us to perpetuate ourselves as a species. And I think it is perfectly possible to believe in all of those things and also just happen to believe that there is someone above watching over you, guiding you subtly here and there in the right direction, and that there is something waiting for you after all of this, something better. But even if there is something better out there, I think we can make something better of what we have down here first. But hey, that's just what I think. I could be wrong. Though what does it mean to be wrong? Is there an objective standard of wrongness? And if there is wrongness in the world, does that mean there is such a concept as rightness?